Hello, welcome back. So the last time we read, we were talking about Ma and Ba were actually talking about the secret to happiness, and Ma was really upset, and Ba was telling her that perhaps the secret to happiness is faith. And that's a belief that things will work out no matter what. And he's saying that if you have faith in life, then maybe you don't worry as much and maybe you're happier. So maybe we've been talking about that one word that could be the secret to happiness, and maybe it's that. I don't know. All right, we're on chapter 26. The next morning, Minli woke up alone under a heavy, rich blanket. Even though she was on the floor of the garden pagoda, she had slept comfortably. And as she sat up, she realized this was probably due to the silk pillows she had been lying on. And I know it's been a while, but you need to remember that Minli is in the inner city right now, and remember that she spent the night with the king in his garden. And obviously she slept in the pagoda, and she's waking up now, and she's going to be on her way. The soft sunlight cast leaf shadows across her face, and the wind made gentle ripples in the moss-colored lake in front of her. The imperial garden was just as beautiful in the day as it was by night. On one side of her lay a small table with a small pot of tea, a bowl of rice porridge, and tea-stained eggs. Breakfast, Minli thought to herself. But before she reached for it, she saw that a yellow brocade traveling bag lay on the other side of her. Inside the bag, Minli found her humble blanket, rabbit rice bowl with a needle and bamboo piece, chopsticks, a generous supply of cakes, and her hollow gourd full of fresh water. On the very top lay the gold-threaded pouch that held the ripped page of fortune. Minli took the pouch and held it with two hands. Well, I have the borrowed line, Minli thought. At least I hope it is. So after a quick breakfast, Minli quickly left the pavilion. Part of her was tempted to explore the mosaic walkways through the jewel-colored leaves, but she knew being discovered by one of the king's counselors would be disastrous. Also, she knew Dragon was patiently waiting outside the city. So, using the king's secret door, Minli carefully left the garden and walls of the inner city. And when she was out of the garden, Minli realized it was very early morning. The outer city was still sleeping. The stands were bare and the umbrellas were closed. Quickly, Minli scurried to the gate. With great effort, she was able to get through. She had to use a metal pole she'd found on the ground to lift the rock and lever one of the doors open. Even then, she was only able to get it open a crack and had to squeeze. As she fell through the gate, gasping for air, she was shocked to see Dragon lying in front of the stone lions, sleeping. It took a couple of prods before Dragon woke, and his loud morning yawns almost put Minli in a panic. But they were able to get back to the hiding shelter of the forest before anyone saw them. What were you doing by the city? Minli asked. You were supposed to stay hidden. I was getting the borrowed line, Dragon said. What do you mean? Minli said. I have the borrowed line. And in a rush, the two of them told each other about their night adventures. Dragon stared at the ripped page from the book, and Minli looked at the red cord in Dragon's hand. So which is the real borrowed line? Dragon asked Minli. I guess that is another question we'll have to ask the old man of the moon, Minli said. Chapter 27. With borrowed lines, Minli and the dragon continued their journey. Minli remade her compass with her rabbit rice bowl and followed the needle's pointed direction. As they traveled, the land became more barren, rocky, and steep. Without trees to tame it, the wind blew wildly, burning Minli's cheeks red with cold. The icy air shoved and pushed them, as if trying to keep them back. And you might remember that we were talking in class that sometimes writers can describe something that's not human, like the wind, but describe it as if it's a person, like the wind pushing them back. And maybe you remember what that's called. We've talked about it a lot. Anyone? Personification. That's right. And this author does that a lot. Late in the afternoon, after traveling up stony ground, Dragon made a noise. "Look up ahead," he said. Far ahead of them seemed to be a spot of bright yellow. Against the gray landscape, it seemed like a fallen piece of gold. "Is it a forest? Trees with yellow leaves?" Minley asked. And then she looked at the gray stones surrounding them. But what trees could grow here? I think there's a village," Dragon said, squinting his eyes. "If there is, we can get you some warmer clothes." Even though the cold hadn't bothered the dragon, he had noticed her shivering. "We won't reach it before night," Minley said, "but I think there's a cave up ahead. Let's stay there for the night, and tomorrow we'll try to reach the village, or whatever that is." The dragon agreed, and they made camp in the cave. The king's supply of traveling cakes saved her and Dragon from hunger. But Minley wished for the thick silk blanket. Even in the shelter of the cave, away from the wind, the earth was stark and cold. Minley built a fire as quickly as she could and sighed as its warmth slowly heated the air. But that night, Minley could not fall asleep. Even with the dragon snoring behind her, the fire crackling, and her blanket around her shoulders, her eyes did not close. Like the stone dust that the wind blew, thoughts kept circling in her head. She kept thinking about Ma and Ba and the orphan buffalo boy. With pangs of guilt, she thought about how Ma and Ba pushed her to go home early from the field, how her rice bowl was always the first filled, how every night when she went to sleep in her warm bed, she knew they were there, and how worried they must have been when she was not. The buffalo boy didn't have that. Instead, he had a dirt floor, a pile of grass for his bed, a muddy buffalo, and a secretive friend. Yet he turned away her copper coin and laughed in the sun. Minley couldn't quite understand it and somehow felt ashamed. But just as Minley shook her head with confusion, there was a sudden sound outside the cave. What was that? She cocked her head. There it was again, like a low grumble of thunder. Was it going to rain? Minley quietly got up and slipped out of the cave to see. But when she got outside, she screamed. The noise had not been the grumble of thunder. It had been a growl of a tiger. The giant tiger snarled and then jumped right at Minley. Chapter 28. Shall I stop here? I think I'll keep reading. The wind screamed as Ma and Ba ate their dinner. The shutters of their house waved and slammed, shaking the house, and the light from their lantern wavered. They looked at each other and wordlessly went to the window. There is fear in the wind, the fish said. Great worry. Is it a storm? Ma asked. Ba looked at the fish. It stared at him with big eyes. I'm not sure, Ba said. The tree branches bent in the wind violently, as if being shaken by the sky. The wind shrieked again, and the cold air gusted into the house. The water in the fishbowl rippled, and the fish swayed in the bowl. Both Ma and Ba shivered. Do you think Minley is outside in this? Ma faltered. I hope not, Ba said. The wind continued to slap the house and trees. More personification. The whole earth seemed to shudder at the screeching wind. Only the moon above was still. Ba looked at Ma and saw her soundless lips move as she gazed at the moon. He knew what she was doing and did the same. Please, he implored the moon silently. Please watch over Minley. Please keep her safe. The moon continued to shine. Chapter 29. Minley's scream seemed to freeze in the air. The tiger leapt at her, his scowling mouth glittering with pointed teeth, his blade-like claws rushing toward her. Minley knew there was no escape. But a flash of red violently knocked the attacking claw away. Minley gasped as Dragon roared, the tiger's claws ripping into his arm. With the brutal force of his other arm, the dragon threw the tiger back, forcing it to fly in the air. "Go away!" Dragon thundered, in a voice that even made Minley quake. She would never have imagined Dragon could speak that way. The tiger glared like a spoiled child. Minley could now see that it was not an ordinary tiger. It was bigger than a horse or a buffalo, and it was dark, dusty green, like the color of sand dirtied from ocean foam. Even in the dim light of the moon, Minley could see its eyes glower with malevolence. So that's a huge word. Malevolence. What do you think that might mean if we use our context clues? I'm going to reread that sentence. Minley could see its eyes glower with malevolence. And she's talking about the tiger that was just trying to attack her. So if his eyes are glowing with something and he was trying to attack her, what feelings do you think he has inside of him that would make his eyes glower with malevolence? Yep, malevolence means evil. "Go!" Dragon commanded again. Minley realized she had forgotten how big Dragon was. The tiger was large, but Dragon was bigger, though the viciousness of the tiger's expression made them seem evenly matched. But the tiger gave another malicious snarl and turned away. Dragon stood with his full height until even the tiger's moonlit shadow disappeared from view. "Are you all right?" Dragon asked finally. That tiger," Minley said in a daze. That tiger was going to kill me." "I know," Dragon said. "That tiger was truly evil. When he screamed, I could feel it." And strangely, without knowing why, Minley burst into tears. The tiger's roars still echoed in her ears, and she could see his cruel claws and eyes. Now that he was gone, her terror flooded out of her. "It's okay," the dragon said, gently putting his arm on her shoulders. It was then Minley saw the 4 long gashes bleeding on Dragon's arm. The tiger's claws had been sharp, and the slashes were deep. Minley shook herself and brushed her tears away. "You're hurt," Minley said, looking at the cuts, which were already starting to swell. "It's all right," Dragon said. "Don't worry. Dragons heal quickly." They walked back into the cave, and Minley poured water on the wounds to clean them. She wrapped her blanket around Dragon's arm, but it continued to slowly bleed. As he lay down, Minley noticed Dragon's eyes fade and blur. "I'm starting to feel strange," Dragon said huskily. "Perhaps I will sleep." Any guesses what's going on with Dragon besides being tired? He's kind of starting to lose his voice. He's sleepy. Keep thinking. "Okay," Minley said, "you sleep. Maybe when you wake up, you'll feel better." But Minley felt as if she had swallowed a frozen rock. Something was wrong with Dragon. She knew it. Throughout the night, his breathing grew hoarser and his skin was damp. Every time she unwrapped the blanket, she grimaced. The ugly wounds had turned black, and evil-looking liquid was starting to seep from his arm. Minley shivered, and it was not from the cold. "He's getting weaker," Minley thought. "Something is very wrong. I have to do something. Dragon needs help, but I don't want to leave him. What am I going to do?" "Willow, what do you think Minley should do?" No response. By the time the first light of the sun crept into the cave, Dragon's breathing was rough. When Minley shook him, he did not wake up. Minley felt a surge of panic. I don't know what to do, she thought desperately. Her quick thinking mind darted like a flustered butterfly. I know, she thought. I'll go to that village. Maybe someone there will know what to do. Minley stood up and whispered into Dragon's ear. I'm going to get help. I'll be back soon, I promise. Just hold on till then, okay? But Dragon did not respond, and Minley felt tears start to form in her eyes. Quickly, without even gathering her things, she turned and left. It was mid-morning outside, and Minley squinted in the sun. The wind still blew bitterly, but she didn't even notice. Instead, Minley began to run toward the patch of yellow in the distance. And we're definitely going to stop there. All right. Goodbye for now from, you guessed it, Mrs. Rickman and Willow, who is once again pretending to nurse like she's a baby. All right. And that's that. See you later.